Vikes visiting the NFC Central leading Buccaneers. Warren Moon to Amp Lee. It's a loose ball. Martin Mayhew picks it up, takes it all the way back. 78 yards for the touch. Tampa Bay wins it in overtime, 20-17. Other scores from today. Cardinals beat the Redskins 24-20. The Eagles 3 points better than the Giants. The Saints win their first game of the year over the Marino-less Dolphins, and the Panthers win their first game in franchise history by 11 over the Jets. Right, the baseball now, the 5th game of the American League Championship Series. Indians and Mariners playing right now at Jacobs Field. Game's in the 5th inning. Scores tied at 1 apiece. Golf news, South African Ernie Els wins the World Match Play Championship, beating Steve Elkington. Here in the States, PGA Tour in Nevada for the 90-hole Las Vegas Invitational. It's Jim Furyk, tied after 4 rounds, finds himself in the bunker, blasts out, and this ball goes on an adventure. Check it out. It's in the hole. Furyk shoots a 67 to finish at 29 under, walks away with $270,000 for his first career win. 270. Ah,
not bad.
I want to be a golfer.
Hey, Chargers weren't looking so good today, and they don't have a very easy second half of the season.
No, they don't. That's the big concern. They got to get healthy, and they got to start playing sound football. No more turnovers.
That's right.
Yep.
No more turnovers.
Thanks. Well, you get more loving per pound. Great Danes invade a Mission Bay hotel.
We'll give you a closer look at these powerful canines when we come back.
That's rather personal.
How much do you spend every year on long distance?
Could be a small fortune.
More than $1,000.
How'd you like to get some of that back?
Certainement.
Say again?
What do I have to do?
Just get Sprint Cents International. Now, on top of simply great rates to countries around the world, you'll get cash back every year you're with Sprint, so it pays to stay.
Really fabulous to get cash back.
I would call more often.
Oh, I'll go for a vacation.
Cash is good.
What are you going to do with the money you get back from Sprint?
Call for Sprint Cents International, now with cash back.
So what are you doing today? Today, Rudy Hanks was at home base saving on everything he needed for his new deck. The Davises are getting advice on how to properly seal their roof. Lynn Sandow is at a home base paint department, getting the exact color she needs for her den. And today at home base, warm up with a 6-pack of Pine Mountain fire logs. They have a 3-hour burn time and are a great value at only $9.97. There are a million other ways we can help. Surely you can think of one. Home base, ready to help.
You know, a lot of people think that all Italian clothing is expensive. Well, that used to be the case, but now the Men's Warehouse has positioned one of our employees in Italy supervising the direct production of our Italian clothing. That's why we can offer quality Italian suits from $300. That's great value, I guarantee it.
8 stores in San Diego. To speak to the store nearest you, call 1-800-776-SUIT.
I trained my boy McNeely to go toe-to-toe with the champ, and he did for 89 seconds. He didn't back down from any combinations thrown at him, and he ain't backing down from this one.
There's a new stuffed crust pizza from Pizza Hut. Not just cheese, but pepperoni baked right into the crust.
So good you'll eat it backwards. Show him, kid.
Oh, boy. The new 1-2 combination cheese and pepperoni stuffed crust pizza.
Hey, McNeely, how many slices am I holding?
To order a VHS copy of a news story seen on 10 News during the past 31 days, call 525-7964.
All right, we're back in Coronado where they've got the water main shut off here and the crews are coming in. What has happened, though, is the Navy shut their water off at the same time the city was shutting theirs off, and so they're not really sure if it's the 16-inch pipe or the 8-inch pipe, so they're going to turn the 16 back on to see if they get any water coming up out of this, and if it is not the 16-inch pipe, then they're going to have to shift their digging over to the medium here, and that could cause a little problems for travel north and south here on Orange Avenue. We'll keep you updated on what's happening here in Coronado. Shaping up to be a beautiful night in San Diego. You might want to head out and look at the sunset. Back to you in the studio, Leonard and Lisa.
All right, sounding pretty good.
Thank you, Sean. Well, the bigger the bundle, the bigger the load, and love in some cases.
Especially when you're talking about Great Danes. These owners say they adore their big dogs. Most of the Great Danes weigh over 100 pounds. The Great Dane Club of America strutted their stuff today at the Mission Bay Bahia Resort Hotel. This week is a national competition for the dogs. Owners say it's really not like owning a dog. They're more like children.
You have to do everything for them. They're more like infants than anything else. They're like children that never actually grow up. You know, the only thing different is you don't have to, we have to take them to school. but you don't have to clothe them.
Thank goodness. Tobin says Wilma and Tilda keep him pretty busy, especially since they are still puppies. My gosh.
You don't have to clothe them, but you got to feed them. That's got to cost a bundle.
I know, it sure does.
That's our time.
That's our time. We want to thank you for watching our newscast today.
And we'll see you back here at 11 o'clock. Good night. Yeah.
A solution for our schools as simple as A, B, C.
A Channel 10 editorial.
We're standing in a disaster area. Tests prove California kids have the worst reading skills in America. Are they stupid? No. Our kids are victims of a harebrained approach to reading called whole language. The theory which the state somehow swallowed in the 80s was that kids naturally learn to read if they are surrounded by interesting stories. So instead of teaching the basic ABCs, young children were handed literature. How to read it? Well, kids were on their own. The approach is total hogwash. It makes no sense, and tests prove it doesn't work. Well, what's next? Teach driving by showing students interesting travel brochures? A state task force has finally agreed. It now backs a solution any parent could have told them years ago. Go back to the basics. Phonics, recognizing letter patterns, early emphasis on reading as the foundation of all other learning. Channel 10 is shocked it took this long for the state to admit its mistake. It's a tragedy for a whole generation. We call on State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Delane Easton, to put the basics back into California schools as soon as possible. That's our opinion. What's yours?
The eve of the Million Man March. They're already arriving in Washington. Race in the courtroom. Do juries put color ahead of the evidence? And what's wrong with the space shuttle?
From ABC, this is World News Sunday. Here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening. They are coming from all over the United States. Black men on their way to Washington to be there for a truly remarkable moment. The Million Man March tomorrow. In Minneapolis, the women saw off the men who began lining up around dawn for the 900-mile trip. In Philadelphia, the school bus service was canceled because so many black drivers will be there. Amtrak is adding trains to Washington from New York. In Washington, where they're all beginning to arrive, here's ABC's Ron Claiborne.
They are the vanguard of what could turn out to be the largest demonstration ever in the nation's capital. For many arriving today, it was like a reunion.
We just come together as one, and we're reaching out for a helping hand. That's all it is. You know, it's going to be a great day tomorrow. We made it.
Among the arrivals, 62 former drug addicts who walked all the way from Philadelphia.
We're coming to rededicate ourselves as men.
Washington is expected to come almost to a standstill tomorrow. Even Congress declared a recess.
Our biggest concern right now is, yes, the logistics of getting people in, but even more than that, getting people out of the city.
Organizers have asked blacks nationwide to stay home from work and not to patronize any businesses. Most black shopkeepers in Washington said they would close for the day.
It might cost me a lot, but I think in the long run it's worth it. Just showing that I do represent and do support the Million Man March and what it represents.
Controversial Nation of Islam minister Louis Farrakhan, whose idea was to stage the march, canceled his public appearances today. But in a speech yesterday, he tried to explain why black women were not invited.
The sisters are not involved in the drive-by shootings. They just carry their babies to the cemetery.
God, I threw up my arm.
In many black churches across the country today, the march was promoted as a chance for unity, atonement, and reconciliation.
We're following truth. We're following righteousness. We're not following a man. We're not following a human being. We're following what God has ordained.
By dawn tomorrow, the mall is expected to be packed for a rally that will last the entire day. The final speaker will be Louis Farrakhan. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, Washington.
A lot of Americans who might have ignored this march are paying close attention because it comes so soon after the O.J. Simpson trial. The verdict and the reaction to it has raised a lot of questions about America's racial divisions. It has also put the focus on one place where blacks are on equal footing with whites as members of a jury. You've heard some people say it. Black juries simply do not want to convict black men. Is that really true? Here's ABC's John Donvan.
Putting race before evidence. In the Old South, it's what white jurors were often suspected of doing almost routinely. Today, that same suspicion surrounds some recent cases that involve black jurors. The case of Washington Mayor Marion Barry actually filmed smoking crack cocaine in a sting operation set up by the overwhelmingly white FBI. But Barry was acquitted on 13 of 14 charges by a jury that was mostly African American. Baltimore last summer, there was so much evidence against Davon Neverton, a murder suspect, that his lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for a 40-year term. Yet after prosecutors rejected the offer, Neverton was found not guilty by a jury that included 11 blacks. Legal scholars have an explanation for this: the black experience with the police. The stories so many black men tell of being treated roughly or stopped and questioned for crimes they did not commit only because the color of their skin made them suspects. When they or their relatives later sit on juries, they may not hear the same story that white jurors hear when cops take the stand to testify. In other words, some blacks may simply have an honest, reasonable doubt about police testimony just because it is the police. An honest, reasonable doubt is one thing, but are black jurors sometimes ignoring the law altogether, putting race before evidence and acquitting black defendants even when they believe they are guilty? Paul Butler, a former prosecutor, says it not only does happen, but that in some cases it should happen.
It's black power in the criminal justice system. If white people don't understand why we're doing it, it's too bad. They don't need to understand it. We have the power as jurors.
That power may be what acquitted this man, Darrell Smith, tried for murder in Washington in 1990. The all-black jury voted not guilty. Then this anonymous letter reached the courthouse, supposedly from a jury member, confessing that most of the jurors believed that Smith committed murder, but they let him go to avoid, quote, sending any more young black men to jail. Butler, now a professor of law, would not have agreed with that verdict because the crime was murder. But for what he calls nonviolent crimes, such as gambling, prostitution, and especially for drug charges which have put so many black men in prison, he says black jurors have a right to refuse to convict, even if the evidence of guilt is overwhelming.
The juror may not like the idea of somebody selling drugs, but she also may not like the idea of this particular young man going to jail and then coming back in the community. Jail doesn't make people better, it makes people worse.
But how can the system continue if people have two different ideas of justice?
Well, it's continuing now, and we have two different ideas of justice. The only difference is that black people don't have any power.
Can the system trust black jurors to be impartial?
The system probably cannot and should not trust black jurors to be impartial if impartial means following the rule of law when the rule of law is against black interests.
But so far, there's no evidence that black juries are routinely letting guilty men go, any more than white juries are. In fact, the few available statistics suggest that black jurors are more likely to convict than to acquit. In Washington, D.C., a city where 98% of defendants, most crime victims, and most jurors are African American, about 60% of felony cases tried by juries last year ended with convictions. In the Bronx, New York, also mostly black and Hispanic, the rate was about 57% for conviction. These conviction rates fall within the range of those recorded by a dozen states across the country. James Curtis is an assistant district attorney in Riverside County, California.
Given their representative numbers in the population, I think that people are convicting black defendants, people of color convicting black defendants, and non-white defendants readily.
As for white jurors,
not guilty of the crime of assault,
the Rodney King case suggests that at times they too may still put race before evidence, even when the evidence is on videotape. Even when the verdict is so obviously wrong, it can set off a riot. As one prosecutor puts it, anyone can take issues of race into the jury box, whether black or white. John Donvan, ABC News, New York.
When we come back, the space shuttle delayed again. Why it is so hard to get off the ground. New findings on the Oklahoma City bombing about the survivors. And what a great chess player has sacrificed for his obsession.
This is World News Sunday, brought to you by Metamucil.
The most precious thing is time. Time with my kids. Time to have fun together. But when I'm irregular, it's not much fun for me or my kids. I can't take a harsh chemical laxative and then get trapped on one of those rides. So I take Metamucil natural fiber therapy. It works with my body safely, gently. Gives me the fiber I need to get regular and stay regular. Thanks to Metamucil, I'm having as much fun as my kids. Sometimes more.
Metamucil, the natural choice for regularity.
Nobody does it like you.
For high traffic areas, now there's the deep cleaning power of the new Hoover Steam Vac Deluxe with 5-brush agitator.
Nobody does it like you.
Now watch this. You can even stand up to a direct hit. Take a look at that. Didn't break. At Lens Crafters, we have these featherweights lenses. They're made of a thin, lightweight material, but they're also tough.
Available now, only at Lens Crafters.
At the Kennedy Space Center today, another setback for the space program. The launch of the shuttle Columbia was postponed for the 6th time in a row. It's more than an inconvenience. As ABC's Ned Potter reports, the delays threaten to undermine the shuttle's very reason for being.
Dawn looked unpromising at the Kennedy Space Center, but when you're NASA and your mission has scrubbed 5 times already, you suit up your astronauts and send them out to the shuttle, waiting and waiting and waiting for the weather to improve. It never did.
Let's go ahead and stand down. Copy that.
Delays like this raise the question of why the shuttles are still so hard to fly.